India and the Czech Republic share close relationship. There have been high-level engagement between the two sides, and with me is the Czech Republic's foreign minister here in Delhi. So welcome to WION. Pleasure having you here. And my first question to you is an obvious question: is what is the key focus of your India visit?
Thank you very much for having me here. And my purpose of this visit to India is to show that the Czech Republic is ready to cooperate, and we have a lot to offer. We have great universities, we have great companies. We want to be building up mutually interesting relationship in terms of research, of innovation. We have a very strong automotive industry, speaking about Škoda, Java, or Tata Trucks, and then we want to be here, and we want to be part of this thriving economy.
Part of this thriving economy, I believe one of the key focus area is also on connectivity, a direct flight perhaps?
Definitely, I'm meeting two representatives, two airline companies, Indigo, one of them, for example, and we want to show them that the Prague is ready for direct flight. We have a very good airfield. The Prague is a very beautiful city, actually. So before COVID, there was 100,000 Indians traveling to Prague yearly. After COVID, now we are on half of that number, 500,000. So let's be working on having these numbers up. And you know, India is a very interesting country for our tourists, and without direct flight, it's much harder to reach here.
So any focus on defense cooperation between the two countries?
I think it's a big opportunity. The Russian war against Ukraine shows that the Russian military is not a reliable partner. We have a very good defense industry, and we are ready to show it to India. Some projects are already happening, and we want to increase that kind of cooperation.
So make in India defense here in India, are you planning that as well, to manufacture here in India?
It is one of the conditions which Indian sides puts on the table all the time, and I think it's understandable condition, understanding the necessity for India to be able to be independent. But of course, we have these technologies, we have these unique Tata trucks, we have very good radar technologies, and we have very other different kind of technologies in military. So it's up to specific companies to offer good deals. But politically, we are ready to be working on that.
So you mentioned about Russia-Ukraine conflict that has been dominating every capital. How do you see India's role as the chair of the G20 in terms of resolving this ongoing conflict in Europe?
G20 presidency, it's a huge opportunity for India, and I'm very grateful for the way how you approach that. And the leadership in G20 is very important, and India shows that it is capable of that, and it's very logical. You have to understand that Russia's war against Ukraine endangers also security of Central Europe and the whole Europe as such. And we were Russian puppet for 40 years, and we don't want to never ever repeat that. We don't want to be again Russian puppet. And Ukrainians now fight not to be Russian puppet, not to be colonized by Russia, because Russia is the last colonial empire in the world. They haven't get rid of the 19th century mentality. And I think we need a fair broker. I think we need a broker who will be able to strive for deals which nurture international relations and the rules-based international relations. And you know, Russia is committing crime of aggression. In the Charter of UN, there is written that the aggression war is not allowed to be waged. It is one of the results of the Second World War. So for India, maybe to be working on pushing the Charter of the UN ahead, I think that would be the role I would see even in a G20 presidency.
We saw at the G20 finance ministers meeting, there was no joint statement because of the West versus Russia plus China conversation which was going on, in fact, TIF going on. Do you think that these groupings should also focus on other things as well? Because it looks like this grouping is now being dominated by only one specific subject.
For us, it is the most important issue we are dealing with. I think it is understandable. I know that it's hard for us. I mean, Czechia is not part of G20, but many other countries from Europe are. It's to have a serious debate on other issues once you feel really endangered by Russian imperialism.
You mentioned about fair broker. Do you see New Delhi as a fair broker in this ongoing conflict?
I was more speaking about the possible role of that. Of course, last week there was a vote in the United Nations General Assembly. India did not vote it in favor of the resolution condemning Ukraine, the Russian war against Ukraine. But I see that this is an opportunity to have a dialogue on that. And you know, when you ask me when I would see the role of India in the G20, I came up with the idea, and I'm standing by that idea, that the Charter of the UN is something which we need to be working on.
I believe your leadership has also said that they would welcome Ukraine into NATO. If you can elaborate, do you back that development? Are you in favor of Ukraine becoming part of NATO once the conflict is over?
I am in favor of Ukraine to integrate into existing European structures, speaking about the EU and also about NATO. But we understand, everyone understands that this can happen after Ukraine solves its current war with Russia, and we are ready to help Ukraine to solve it.
But are you hopeful that this conflict can be resolved? Because as of now, it doesn't look that there is any peace formula that is being taken by either side. In fact, the two sides are not even talking. So are you hopeful that this conflict will come to an end?
There is a 10-point plans of Mr. Zelensky. We are supporting it very much. You know, Ukraine is fighting for their freedom. Ukraine is fighting for the territorial integrity of Ukraine in its internationally recognized borders. Ukraine is fighting for its sovereignty. They have a full right to fight for it and defend itself. Ukraine is not waging war against Russia. Russia is waging war against Ukraine. I know it's from distance, it seems as some kind of European conflict, but there's a lot of principles in it. And for my country, for Europe, it is about our security too, because if Russia is allowed to expand, then they will attack Baltic countries, then will attack Poland, maybe Czechia again. I don't want to happen.
So you see a repeat of perhaps a World War II scenario, because your country in fact was the first country that came under attack. You see a repetition of World War II scenario, because
we may be, there is a lot of parallels. Of course, there are no two same things in history ever, but there is a lot of parallels, and I think we shouldn't allow Russia to become a snowballing empire again.
So you mentioned about that Ukraine should become part of the NATO, but if you
one day I see it as a possibility, yeah.
But if you look at the Russian claims, or what the Russian narrative has been, that it's the fact that NATO was expanding, that is why it took that action. The conflict started. What do you have to say about that?
We are hearing that decades, but NATO was enlarged because those countries wanted to join NATO. My country joined NATO in 1997 because we wanted to join NATO, not because someone in Washington would say, okay, Czechia will be part of NATO. It's our voluntary decision, and I'm proud that my country is a member of the most powerful military organization in the world, and my country is now the most safest by the fact that we are a member of NATO. So I very well understand that the Ukrainians want to be rather part of NATO than Moscovite Empire.
So now coming back to, again, the big focus of your visit. Before your visit started, there was a release by your ministry which said that focus will also be on the Indo-Pacific vision as well. So if you can elaborate as to what view your country has regarding this specific vision, the Indo-Pacific vision, and how your country can help in this vision.
I think everyone understands that the motor of world is in the Pacific right now. It's growing economies, it's growing populations, growing trade. We need to understand what is going in the Pacific. We need to have good policies. And you know, my government stated quite clearly that we want to cooperate with democracies in the Pacific region. India is the biggest democracy in the world. So therefore, here I am presenting my country, representing the businesses we want to interconnect. Research and innovation is basically the key of prosperity. So we want to create a lot of good things on this field, and we are ready to cooperate.
When it comes to the Indo-Pacific, there are similar worries and challenges that exist in Europe. India has been facing the challenge when it comes to its northern borders. There are other countries as well. What do you have to say about these challenges when it comes to issues arising from countries being aggressive in the region?
I think the biggest challenge in the Pacific is China, and its economic superpower. It's becoming a military superpower, and we need to be ready to be looking for ways how to approach it. I think India understands this very, very well. I think Europe understands it quite well, and definitely the US understands it very well. And we need to be able to cooperate on that, and talk to Chinese in a way that we will avert possible future conflicts which may arise.
Very frank of you to use the word China, because many in the region perhaps will not use the word China directly, but the Chinese aggressive actions, the worry regarding it, have you discussed it with your partners and allies in Europe and in the Indo-Pacific?
Yes, we have a clear strategy in the EU. We have a clear strategy in NATO, which describes China as a set of challenges and opportunities, both. And we need to be ready for challenges and, of course, developing those opportunities, because it's not black and white. And why I shouldn't use the word China? I think it's obvious. The size of that country and the influence of that country is obvious. And this is when we have a statement that we want to that my government has a statement that we want to cooperate with democracies in the Indo-Pacific region. We really mean it for a good reason, because democracies are able to cooperate. India, the biggest democracy in the region, and many other democracies here are. So we have a lot of partners to be working with.
Mm-hmm. And what do you have to say about Chinese aggressive actions with India in its northern borders?
I think countries should respect their territorial integrity and sovereignty. It's the same case with Ukraine. So definitely I would condemn any aggressive action of such kind, and everything should be done to avert any kind of military escalation and loss of lives.
Mm-hmm. So coming to the trade part, there has been conversation for EU-India free trade agreement. It has been taking time, but what's your view? How can your country help to make sure that this trade pact can be signed as soon as possible?
We need very intensive dialogue, and I'm proponent of very intensive dialogue between the EU and India. It's not an easy discussion, it's a tough discussion, but to have an open and frank but tough discussion is always absolutely okay. So let's have the discussions, let's be looking for ways where we will find a mutually beneficial relationship where we can open our markets, and at the end of the day, both sides will prosper.
Mm-hmm. So if I can come back to my previous question, you said I condemn any action that does not respect the sovereignty. Are you saying you're condemning China when it comes to it is not respecting the sovereignty of India?
I'm speaking that in the international scene, we need to be respecting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries in internationally recognized borders. So if China commits such acts, I will condemn such acts from China. So I don't want to make a general statement, but specifically, this is quite clear. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So now coming to multilateral groupings, how they are working, UN has been found missing at a time when the conflict was raging in Europe. What's your view on reforms of the Security Council, especially India's bid? Because India is very keen to be member of the UN Security Council, but there are countries in the Council which are not very keen to see an expansion of the grouping.
This is a long-term debate. I don't see any solution to that. Until that, I support that India is member of Security Council as much as possible by those different votes. And definitely, yes, UN needs a reform, but historically, it's not easy to reform. I think it's the power and international position of India is absolutely clear. There's no debate about that. And I would like to hear more India voice in the UN, even through the permanent membership of UN Security Council. I would welcome that very much.
Mm-hmm. So my last question to you is India and Central Europe, a lot of engagements. In fact, there was a meeting between the Indian External Affairs Minister where you were present, the Austrian Foreign Minister was present, and the Slovak Foreign Minister was present. It's a format.
It's called Slavkov format, yeah.
That's
yes.
complex. Slavkov format of conversation. So how do you see India's engagement with Central Europe? Are you looking at some kind of major cooperation with the grouping coming together?
I think it's important that when India delegations travel to Central Europe, that you can at once meet all of state representative. It's very logical. So, for example, this S3 Slavkov format is a very good format. Czechia, Austria, Slovakia. Let's have the discussions. And of course, the business in Europe is interconnected. So once you make a business in Czechia, you can easily go to Slovakia, Austria, because we have this European common market. So it makes sense to have these bundles. We are very much open to that. I would like to have a strong cooperation on research and innovation between Czechia and India. It makes sense to me. We have a good universities. We have a good startups, good spin-off. Some companies are already doing business here. I mentioned, for example, Škoda and Tatra. There's many of them. And it's always good then when politicians meet and say, yes, this is okay, we want this and we want more of that. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, sir, for speaking to WION. It was a pleasure speaking to you on a host of issues, and perhaps we will have more conversation, not only at the people-to-people level, but at the government-to-government level as well. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.